Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, some news come out from the airlines and the government today that they have changed the refund policies and making it easier for people to get refunds when your flights are delayed, at least here in Canada so far, and I think it's going to spread more to the United States as they're talking about doing the exact same thing. So let's see why they're making these changes. And is it really any better? So our first story is Air Canada and the Canadian government. The Canadian government is, sorry, not just Air Canada, any airline in Canada flying. They have now tightened some of the laws and the rules for getting a refund when the flights are really delayed or you're stuck on a tarmac. Now, we don't normally here in Canada get stuck on tarmacs very long. That's not a thing. I know a lot of stories that you hear from international flights landing in the United States or taking off and they're stuck on the tarmac 7, 8, 9 hours because in the regulations it'll say that as long as you've left the docking terminal there at the airport, that is considered part of the flight. It's not considered being inside. Like it doesn't count as time. So it just counts as a long flight. Even if the flight's a 4-hour flight and you're stuck on the tarmac 8 hours, it's considered a 12-hour flight. They can only consider you delayed if you're still in the terminal or the plane is still at the dock itself. But they've aimed at tightening some of the regulations here where, for instance, here in Canada, the airlines were saying technical difficulties. That's why you can't get a refund. It's beyond our control. We had technical difficulties. And technical difficulties was anything from the pilot didn't show up to the plane wasn't ready, they misscheduled the plane and it's in another airport completely, etc., etc. You get the drift. Almost anything can be considered a technical issue. Well, the Canadian government has worked on it and it's got some mixed responses. They have tightened it, but they still leave it kind of vague, right? They, instead of saying that they no longer say you can use technical issues, they also have now put it on the onus of the airlines to prove that it was a quote-unquote extraordinary circumstance. So they cannot deny a person's claim for money or refunds or expenses without proving that it was some sort of extraordinary circumstances, but they don't really go into a detail of what was an extraordinary circumstances. For instance, is a blackout in Florida where the airplanes can't take off, say, for 4 or 5 hours, that causes all the flight delays and takeoffs in Canada flights because those planes are coming in and flying someplace else. Is that an extraordinary circumstance? Or is it just logistics? It goes a little bit vague that way, but at least it's something. And also, just to give an idea, the complaints to the airlines about this and looking for refunds has topped 52,000 so far this year. That's 3 times higher than it was even last year. Even though flights are going much smoother, more people are traveling again. So yeah, it's triple. And if you're wondering how long does it take right now to clear up one complaint, they say the average rate to clean up these complaints is 2 years. So imagine waiting 2 years to receive your $600 Air Canada voucher or refund. It's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of ridiculous that it takes that long for something. But now at least it's going to be on the onus of the airline to prove why they did it. They also have tightened the time where you are automatically allowed to get refunds and that. You know how you can be delayed? So there's bad weather, okay? The airlines can do nothing about that. But you're about to fly and they say, sorry, Like what happened to me on my flight home, I was in Montreal, and every flight in Montreal was canceled. Every single flight, almost. I think there were 6 that took off out of the 300 that were scheduled to leave that evening. 6 out of 300, not a good ratio. So they told us, well, normally they rebook you. Now I was very lucky. I got rebooked fairly early in the morning, but other people were still flying and delayed. I was talking to a really nice couple on the plane with me, and they had been delayed and stuck in Montreal for over 2 days, and then they arrived here in Ottawa, and their next flight was delayed as well. They were traveling back to the United States, and the plane had to come through Canada. And they arrived in Montreal, and then they flew to Ottawa, and then from Ottawa they fly to Toronto. From Toronto they flew into it was a mess. They were just being rescheduled everywhere. Well, the current time where you're allowed to put in for an automatic refund is 48 hours. If your trip is delayed or postponed or interrupted for more than 48 hours, and now they've tightened that window as well. They haven't come out and said what the hours are yet, but it's supposed to be less than 24 hours. So we'll see what happens, but that's good news. Hopefully this will help clear up a lot of the backlog in airline complaints, and quite frankly, if the airline cannot get you rescheduled in 48 hours, you should be able to get your money back immediately. There should be no question. It should automatically be transferred back to your credit card. Here's an example. I had to cancel, I found a cheaper cabin. I found a cheaper cabin on one of my cruises, and it was already past final payment date. However, it was only at the point where the deposit was what was going to be lost, which at this time was $125. And I looked at the savings that I was going to get. It was $3,600. Well, that's a no-brainer. So I canceled, even though it was paid in full, I canceled my cruise and I rebooked a brand new cruise, knowing that I would get my refund and I would lose the $125. Lose $125, save over $3,000. It was a no-brainer decision. I'd do it automatically. Well, I had my refund back in less than a week. I was shocked. Princess got my money back to me in less than a week. So why does it sometimes take the airlines years to get people their refunds back? That's a pretty darn interesting question. And I know some of the regulations in the United States and the holdups and that can be very comparable and even worse as far as your waiting time and how long you're sitting on tarmacs and the rerouting and the cancellations that happen all the time, not to mention the fact that they overbook planes. They can oversell planes a lot. A lot of times you will see people out there and they're offering you, if you don't need to get on this flight, we'll offer you another flight 6 hours later, but we'll give you $300. And then they'll announce about 10 minutes later, well, we'll give you $500, and it becomes a bidding process, right? And they always start pretty low, so never take that first offer. I've heard it go from one flight. I was sitting there and we were in Florida and the flight was heading back. That flight was going international, and I was sitting there waiting for my Air Canada flight to go back home, and it started off at $50 and flights later on that night about 6 hours later. And then it kept bidding up and bidding up and bidding up. It eventually got up to $1,500 to fly 6 hours later. I'd have jumped all over that. I'd have jumped off. $50 isn't going to do it, but $1,500 certainly would do it. Absolutely. Well, let me know what you guys think. Do you think this was a good decision by the airlines? How has your experience been flying this year so far? As I said, I have not had, I don't think, a flight this year where my flight home hasn't been interrupted in some way. Now, I have had hardly any difficulty flying to my destination, which is really weird. But on my flights home, whether it's been from Europe or whether it's been from North America, like say Vancouver to here, or whether it's Montreal to Ottawa or whether it's Florida back to Canada. I've had a delay every single time. I'm wondering if everyone else is experiencing something like that. But I have a streak going, folks. I have a streak. I counted it out the other day, and I have had 17 flight delays returning home in a row. Can anybody out there beat that? Well, I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world? Hit that subscribe button. Until next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.